Oregon State's 0-5 start have fans furious, but Trent Bray thinks they're only 6 minutes from getting back in the right seat. Can they do that this week against Appalachian State? And can they do it with the same coaching staff? Yes, welcome on into the Pac-12 Daily Podcast. I'm your host, Christian Rao. Let's get on into it. Oregon State talk today. We're also going to talk Colorado State, Washington State game, and continue to dive in as we cover all the new teams inside the new Pac-12 that will start in July of 2026. But we're not waiting around. We're talking about them all right here. Hit that subscribe button so you don't miss a single conversation about any of these new teams in the conference. Let's dive into Oregon State because that is the main attraction right now when it comes to storylines. It is a wild storyline with Trent Bray. The fact that they are now 0-5 after losing to Houston on Friday, and they make no changes. And not only do they not make any changes to the coaching staff, Trent Bray on Monday doubles down with what he thinks about his coaching staff for the rest of the season. He addressed the team's 0-5 start, the heartbreak to the Houston loss, because it was definitely a heartbreak for sure, and how Oregon State plans to respond. Trent Bray emphasized that the Beavers played, quote, 54 minutes of winning football versus Houston, but shifted into survival mode when it comes to those and being aggressive in those final few minutes, 6 minutes to be specific. Now, if you remember, they were winning 24-10 with 6 minutes and some change left to go in the football game. They wind up losing that one in a disastrous fashion, 27-24 in overtime. That mindset change, rather than play calling, cost them the game. And he defended his staff. He defended his special teams coach, Jamie Christian, who yet again, for probably the third game in 5 games this season, is the reason why Oregon State got a loss in that column. And offensive coordinator Ryan Gunderson, who has struggled so far. And we're going to look at some of these numbers, how it compares, especially to their next opponent, Appalachian State, in just a minute. He backed them up and said he doesn't believe that it's worth changing at the moment. He says that it just doesn't make any sense. He says that if you were doing a firing mid-season, it would not help the players at all. I think the translation to that is if you made a firing mid-season, you're punting on your season. And you're basically already there at 0-5. You have statistically a shot to go 7-5 or 6-6, and that's your only chance the rest of the way to be bowl eligible. But after that, what are you trying to get? What kind of moral victories are you trying to gain from Oregon State? If you made a firing or a staff change to the point where it's not the head coach, I think you try and find a way to light a fire under the team. Now, if it's the head coach, the portal opens. That's a different kind of story, and players can leave and exit, and maybe you don't have enough to roster. So maybe the fact that Trent Bray hasn't left yet is actually a good thing for the majority of the season for Oregon State, because who knows what kind of exodus might happen. I still don't think he's the right guy for the job. I still think he's the guy that is probably going to have to change before next season starts. And the longer you let this one go down the tracks, the more problems I think you're going to have to incur over and over again throughout the next couple years. And hopefully it doesn't affect you being competitive right away in the new Pac-12. A couple other things he talked about, and let's go back to the Houston collapse. He continued to talk about how the Beavers led and controlled 54 of the 60 minutes, how they tried to survive instead of staying aggressive, and the execution breakdowns, not play designed, doomed them. And of course, you can talk about the fact that Malik Murphy wasn't in on a third down because he had a hand injury, or the special teams that really stopped them. And that's something that just seemed predictable and expected, something we talked about on the reaction show this past weekend. There's a lot of feelings I have about this, the fact that he's not making any coaching changes. But look, if that's the way they're going to go, you have a long road trip to get to the East Coast to play Appalachian State this weekend. What is your mindset if you throw a terrible game yet again and go to 0-6 on the season? I don't see this team winning out, getting to 6-6 if that happens, just to save yourself a bowl season. You're at the point to where players, if they have the opportunity, are going to redshirt. I'm sure that's the case. I'm sure there's already been conversations kind of lurking about when it comes to that. If there are any players left in that category, because we are past the 4-game mark. But if we are there and you move to 0-6 on the season, do you pull the trigger then? Do you then decide, okay, it gives me a whole half a season to make a head start on this? We're starting to see more coaches opening up, more vacancies. UCLA, Virginia Tech, Arkansas. There's a lot of vacancies happening inside of Power Power 4 football, inside of college football in general, Oregon State is going to be left behind the dust if they're not trying to get one of these top candidates to try and turn their program around. This Appalachian State game, according to Trent Bray, says physical, fast, run first, and comparable to Houston. The run first thing, when you look at the stats, maybe statistically by a player, you might agree with that. But when you look as a team as a whole, I don't know if I actually agree with that. Passing offense for Appalachian State is actually 26 in the country compared to rushing offense, only 86 in the country. So you would have to think maybe they are run first, but they are going to beat you when it comes to the passing attack. They average 284 yards of passing yards each game, 148 on the ground for a total of 433.2 yards per game. That's good enough for 48th in the country. Now, bright side, and take this as a bright side if you want, but 433 yards is a lot. And even for Oregon State standards this year being 0-5, that is a lot. They've only allowed that many yards 2 of the 5 games this season. If you could guess them, you would probably be right. It's the Texas Tech and the Oregon game. I don't think Appalachian State is anywhere close to Texas Tech or Oregon when it comes to that type of offensive prowess. So I expect Oregon State, and expect is a huge word to feel in right now after being 0-5 and not getting any changes to the coaching staff and don't know what's going to happen moving forward with some of these players when it comes to injuries or deciding to sit out. But I expect them to keep them below that 433 mark. If you look at the Cal game, they allowed 356. That was their most outside those 2 games. Last week against Houston, 352. And their best game of the season, the game they should have won, of course, was against Fresno State, where they only allowed 318 yards. That's where I expect them to be, around the 320 to 350 in game and yards allowed. That would be almost 100 less than their average. And that's a win in itself. But can't have moral victories when you're 0-5. A win itself won't do good enough. You have to have one of those green W's in the left side of that win column, that record column, I should say, and move yourself to 1-5 on the season when you're done with this road trip for sure. Rounding this out, if you want to compare this, if you want to just put it in apples to oranges in here, if you want to compare Appalachian State's offense to Oregon State's offense, then go ahead and do so. Oregon is 60th in the country in passing offense compared to that 26 for Appalachian State. Rushing offense, Oregon State's 127 compared to 82nd for Appalachian State. And of course, adding that all up, Oregon State's total offense good enough for 110th in the country. That counts Power 4, that counts G5/6, however you want to call that. All of that, all 136 teams in the FBS, Oregon State sits as the 110th best offense in the country. I mean, that's better than 0-5 because there's only 3 winless teams left on the schedule, or as you see it for all of college football right now. So at least you're doing a little bit better, but not enough to make you think there shouldn't be changes happening in Corvallis. We'll see what happens as we get down the road. There are some more things I want to discuss as we get closer to this game against Appalachian State. The running back room is something to be excited about. And although they did lose that game to Houston, there's some exciting things to look at for this defense. So we'll do that later on this week. Still lots to talk about. But the biggest takeaway here, Trent Bray has decided to stick with Jamie Christian, stick with Ryan Gunderson, and move on with this coaching staff, even sitting at 0-5, their worst start since 1996. Next up, let's dive into the game that will be new rivals starting next season. 2 new Pac-12 teams taking it on in Fort Collins this past weekend. Washington State taking on Colorado State. Washington State taking care of business, 20-3. I want to start off on the Colorado State side, though, because you had Jackson Brousseau, who's making his first career start, and there just wasn't any help for him in this game. And hopefully they don't hold that against him. I'm hoping that's not the case because I think he has a bright future ahead of him if some other things fall in place for him, especially on that offensive line. Again, they lost this game 20-3. He was 19 for 28 in this game for 188 yards, averaged 6.7 yards per carry, did have 21 yards of rushing on the ground as well. But this is my biggest take for the redshirt sophomore here, making his first career start. The first things I took was, one, he continued to grind in this one. He had an amazing, probably the best drive of the game was right before halftime, that 2-minute offense he had before half, drove down. There was multiple drives in this game where they got into scoring territory and they just couldn't capitalize, whether it was a missed field goal or a dumb turnover or a drive would stall out, whatever the case may be. but not much of that. Maybe a little, sure, but not much of that was on Brousseau's uh, ledger, really in his fault. So definitely things that you can pick up and work on if you're Jackson Brousseau. He got hit a lot, and I don't think PFF or ESPN gave enough credit for those hits. Last time I looked, I think he only had 3 hits on there, but it felt like a ton. The offensive line gave him no help, so many pressures, and especially up the middle, it was a struggle for Brousseau the entire game against Washington State. I thought he did a good job reading the edge rushers, the edge blitzers. I thought he did a good job letting go of the football, making a good reaction throw when he read the blitzes coming from the outside. But the offensive line, again, gave him no help. The pocket broke down, and it happened too often, especially coming through the inside. He'd try to sit in the pocket, and he would have offensive linemen tripping up on him, and he would have to make throws that just were almost impossible, mostly ending up short because of it. I think you find a way to continue to move with him. You don't go back and switch to what you had in the past. You can't do that. You just can't go back to that yet right away. I'm sorry. I just don't think that's the right answer. Although it might be the easiest answer because he has been your quarterback for so long in Fowler Nicolosi. But I just don't think you do that right away. There were some good upsides though. When it comes to the rest of the offense, I thought Marshall, the running back for Kansas State, has a lot of upside, but he did give up a turnover. He was one of those reasons that stalled out one of those drives. Unfortunate, but you can't have that. Those are those type of mistakes when you're trying to get right after losing a tough game to UTSA the week before and then really struggling terribly in this game against Washington State. You can't have those mistakes. Overall, I really think that you just got to find a way to get better. And Jay Novell might be on the hot seat as well. We talked about Trent Bray possibly being the head coach that needs to go after the season. Heading into the new Pac-12, Norvell might need to be a new coach for Kansas State. There might need to be a new address there. Bullock experiment. That's what I wrote down here. You bringing in this quarterback to do run-only plays on 3rd and short or 4th and short, that's got to go. It's so predictable. It's so predictable when Bullock comes in and he's going to run the football. And on 4th down, you don't even do a quarterback power up the middle. You're not even under center. It was a shotgun and it was a sweep to the outside, to the running back side as well. So predictable, a really strong example why it was taken down for a loss, for a turnover on downs. It just can't happen. That 2-point conversion against UTSA the week before where he made that dreadful pass as well. I think that experiment has to be over moving in for the rest of the season if they want to try and salvage this one and move on for the rest of the year. They're on the road against San Diego State this coming Saturday. Actually, I'm sorry, this Friday night. And we'll see if they can make some kind of rebound. San Diego State only won their game 6-3. So you're right in that category, only scoring 3 points in this one against Washington State this past weekend. The offensive line has to do better, full stop, period, if Colorado State wants to be any better than their 1-3 record so far this season. If they want to win another game this season, that offensive line needs to step up because it is dreadful. It was one of the worst offensive line performances I have watched all season throughout all the college football I've watched. And I would say most definitely the worst offensive line performance I've seen watching Pac-12 in Mountain West football, easily, hands down, all season long. So that's my takeaway for Washington State defeating Colorado State. From the Colorado side, I'm going to give you my thoughts on Zevi Eckhouse and the Washington State Cougars and their win right here next. Well, we mentioned how Colorado State's Jackson Brousseau had his first career start. Well, Zevi Eckhouse had his third career start and his second start of the season this year for Washington State in that 20-3 victory against the Colorado State Rams on the road. Zevi Eckhouse looked good. I thought he looked great. 16 for 28, 189 yards and 2 touchdowns, no picks. He didn't have to be amazing in this one because for once, for the first time all season, this running game finally stepped up and you had multiple guys with over 25 yards rushing. You had 158 yards rushing on the ground. That might not sound like a lot, but they headed into this one 133rd in the country, averaging only 58 yards per game. They put an extra 100 on that mark and got 158 in the contest. So lots of good stuff from the run game. The offensive line was tested and they stepped up and they moved forward. A lot of good things from this Washington State team. I want to see what you can get a lot more from them moving forward, because under Jimmy Rogers, I mean, this guy is an intense coach. He's super intense. And under him, after that dreadful loss to North Texas, after sticking around with the Washington Huskies for 3.5 quarters, you have a decent shot at being a good team the rest of the way. That close game against Idaho to start off his tenure, that nice commanding win against San Diego State in week 2, and of course this 20-3 showdown against Colorado State this last weekend is a huge victory. Now you're sitting at 3-2. You have a bye week, and you have the toughest test on your schedule coming up on October 11th. It's going to be on the road against Ole Miss, a team that has been really good, just beat LSU, and is now 4th ranked in the country. So it's going to be a true test. It's probably going to be a bigger test than Washington on a talent-wise. Maybe not when it comes to motivation or it comes to atmosphere because of the Apple Cup, but in talent-wise, Ole Miss is a very good football team this year. Could be the top team in the SEC when it's all said and done. Overall, I thought Zevi Eckhouse did really good in his performance. He loves that post route, and somehow they find a way to continue to leave that post route open for him, and he finds a way every time. The post to Noga for a 35-yard touchdown for that first touchdown of the game was absolutely beautiful. It was a perfect pass. Nobody could have threw it better, not even Peyton Manning. It was that good of a football pass. Voorhees is being one of those type of running backs, and it's nice that you finally started seeing the numbers, but he's getting this nice connection with Zevi and the rest of the Washington State offense, and I want to see him get more volume. And you were starting to see that in this Washington State-Colorado State matchup. I want that to continue as well. Freeman for special teams, another good kick. He continues to be solid and reliable. That's something that is definitely going to come in handy the rest of the season, especially when you start going on the road. Washington State's travel is insane. You're at Ole Miss, you're at Virginia, and you're home for Toledo, back in Corvallis, home for La Tech, then back on the East Coast for James Madison until you finish the season at home against Oregon State again. There's just a lot. There's some things that still need to be cleaned up. And Jimmy Rogers was definitely making sure that was the case in the post-game presser before he even left the field, talking to the broadcast announcers. He was excited to talk about the win, but you could tell, I mean, with this intense kind of grin, he's like, yeah, well, there's a lot of things that need to get worked on, and we're going to work on them right away. I think the first thing that comes to mind on the defensive side, there was way too many penalties, especially on the defensive pass interference side, and it kept Colorado State in this one even closer. Although the score doesn't reflect it, Colorado State put themselves in position multiple times to score. They just couldn't make it happen. Washington State kept them around for that reason. A lot of it due to multiple defensive pass interference calls. Also, there was a lot of wide receiver drops. Zevi Eckhouse had some really good passes on this one, and there was multiple drops that would have opened this game up even more. If you fix that penalty side and you get some of these drops taken care of, this game is probably 41-3. Like, it was a very big change. Ellison had a drop. Meredith, I think, had 2 drops from what I remember. Freeman had a drop as well. I think the Freeman and one of the Meredith drops were for touchdowns. So there's a lot of things that still can be cleaned up. But when you're winning by 17 against a team that's going to be in your conference next year, you're winning by 23 against San Diego State, against a team that's going to be in your conference next year. That shows that there's a lot to still be excited for if you're Washington State, especially when you know there's a lot to still clean up. Jimmy Rogers is not satisfied with this team. We heard that in his press conference last week after the Washington game, and that should actually get you excited if you're a fan of the Washington State Cougars, without doubt. Do I think they have a chance against Ole Miss? You never know. It's college football, but I expect it to be a win on the Ole Miss side. But what I do expect is to see this team fight for maybe longer than 3 quarters, like they did against Washington in the Apple Cup. Lots of stuff to be excited about for Washington State. I think they are one of the better teams in this new Pac-12 right now. I would hand it to them. I think Utah State's pretty tested as well. And I think Fresno State is another one. And then, of course, you got Boise in the way. Those 4 right now have surprised me the most. I think you can put San Diego State possibly in that conversation if they can score some points this coming Friday against Colorado State. Overall, of these new 8 teams coming into the league, all 8 of them, including Washington State and Oregon State, there's a lot to be excited about, and you definitely better be paying attention, because although they're not technically Pac-12 schools this year, 6 of the 8, they're all going to be there next year. And the majority of these rosters will be coming along with them. All right, folks, we're going to wrap it up for this episode. I appreciate you stopping by. Hit that subscribe button wherever you're listening or watching on YouTube. Drop a comment. Let me know your favorite team. We're going to talk more tomorrow. We're going to get into some other teams and some other conversations. I got some cool interviews set up for the rest of the week as well. And we'll be back here next time with another episode of the Pac-12 Daily Podcast.